You're listening to Big World Network.
Just Kill Me, Season 4, Episode 6, The Players Change, Again. Written and read by Wendy Herman. So, I was trying to put it all together in my head. If you were trying to hide us from this Dunwaddle, Trevor corrected me calmly. Dunwaddle, I repeated. Why not just change our names, or put us in the witness relocation program or something? It was too risky. We believed the implants would stay dormant as long as your memory loss was permanent, which obviously didn't happen, and I'm really sorry about that. Plus, Dunwaddle never knew your names. He only saw reports that referred to you as Subject 1 and Subject 2. And they just took you on your word that we were dead? Changing dental records and switching toe tags in the morgue was a lot easier back then, he replied mischievously, but I got the gist. And how did you overthrow Pixley, Supreme Chancellor? He laughed, a laugh so real, it reminded me of all the times we laughed together as husband and wife. I shook my head and blinked several times to get rid of the emotion welling up in me. I was suddenly being overwhelmed by the realization of the 20 years I'd spent living someone else's life. I didn't know how much more I could handle. I swallowed hard and sat up straighter as if that would help me cope. Trevor seemed to notice I was losing it and stopped laughing. He cleared his throat before he answered my question. Pixley was working at headquarters in D.C. when he was given the menial task of transferring all the remaining paper files to digital about 16 years ago. He came across the RVW files, and there was one form, a form Dunwaddle never saw, that had your names on it. I narrowed my eyes in question, but said nothing. He continued. It so happens he'd also heard about a stellar Air Force captain at the time, named Freya Tamar McKenna, who had recently appeared on the Future Female Leaders list that the Bureau puts together for the White House. Young women the FBI checks out and thinks should be groomed for high-level government jobs, projected for the next 20 years or so. It's nothing that makes the papers, but Pixley had been on the task force to put the list together, and he recognized your name right away. It's not exactly a common one. They checked me out, and they didn't find anything suspicious? We had done a pretty good job of filling in the blanks. Remember, you'd already had a security clearance done for the Air Force. I don't remember being on any list, I stated, nervously crossing my legs the other way. You wouldn't. They don't make it public knowledge. It's just an eyes-only memo for the POTUS and his immediate staff. So, Pixley's in cahoots with you now, or? I asked, still waiting for the punchline. Long story short, he made assistant director at the Minneapolis office 10 years later, then when he took over here last year, and found out my wife's name was Freya. Well, he started to ask questions. He called me into his office about 6 months ago. I thought he was going to rat me out to Dunwaddle, but instead, he stopped to chuckle lightly, remembering the encounter. Instead, he said he wanted to be part of it. Part of it? In what way? I asked. He said ever since he'd read the RVW file, he'd wanted to meet the bionic woman and the $6 million man, as he put it. He was as giddy as a schoolgirl when I told him, I felt I had no choice at the time, about what we'd done 20 years ago, erasing your memories and hiding you in suburbia. He's been helping me ever since. We just disagree on how to proceed from here. What do you mean? It was his idea that I act like I was coming unhinged. He doesn't want me to tell you the truth. He thinks it's too risky, but I just can't keep up the crazy facade. I mean, I admit I panicked at first when I walked in on you three in the kitchen, and some of the things I said, well, I knew. I knew my picture-perfect life was over, and I didn't want it to be. You threatened to take my boys not 30 seconds ago, I said flatly. I know, that was over the line. I guess I'm still trying to save us. I'm sorry. You would have been if you'd tried. I had never been more serious in my life. Oh, I know. We sat in silence for a moment regarding each other. Then he sighed. Freya, I don't know what to do. Dunwaddle contacted me personally yesterday. He said he'd received an automatic message that someone had accessed your old FBI file, and I was the only person who was involved in the project who's still on the radar. I assured him the two sleepers were long dead, that I'd done my job, but he's on to me. Us. I think he knows you're alive. He sighed and leaned back in the chair, and I immediately thought of the movie The Godfather. The whole scenario was surreal, to say the least. Then he leaned forward again. Plus, your father refuses to believe a word I say. He believes he has proof to bring me down, but the truth is, I have no idea what he has. He's taken Ripped his old house in Garrity to retrieve it, and we're letting him. So Ty's not in any danger. I don't think so, no. And you have been pretending to be my husband for 15 years. Why? Why didn't I just marry Ty, if we were relatively safe hiding out in small-town America? He looked sad, and that made me angry for some reason. He had no right to be sad. Even if what he was saying was true, any of it, he'd been given the luxury of choice these past 2 decades, something that had been taken away from Ty and me. Ty asked me to keep you safe, whatever the cost. He didn't think you would be safe being with him, that the 2 of you together was too risky, so he asked me to take care of you. I couldn't believe the bullshit he was trying to hand me. Ty wanted me to marry you? I asked with utter shock. No, Freya. Of course he didn't want you to marry someone else, but he didn't see any other way. He loved you, loves you, more than anything. He just wanted you to be safe. We both wanted you to be safe. Why would you do something like that? Give up your own life to marry someone you didn't love? Even for a friend? I never said I didn't love you. I was speechless. He smiled at me and my heart skipped, like it used to when he looked at me like that. I'm not saying I jumped at the chance, he continued, but it was an honor to be your husband, even if I wasn't your first choice. My head was spinning. I didn't know what to believe anymore. My life was unrecognizable from the one I had known just a few short weeks ago, and even that one had been all fake, orchestrated by Trevor, and apparently a very young Ty. Or was it? My head started to pound and my vision blurred. I looked up at Trevor and he seemed taken aback. Freya, calm down. I'm telling you the truth. Try to calm down. His words were becoming slurred, and I knew it was because my implant was trying to activate, my defense mechanism trying to rescue me from all the emotion flooding my brain. I couldn't stop it until... Beetlejuice, 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 I heard Trevor say, muffled and hazy. My heart rate steadied and my vision returned, but my head was still pounding. How did you do that? I mumbled, feeling a little hungover. Just a little magic spell I programmed to override your implant. You okay? I nodded. Beetlejuice, I had to laugh, but winced as my throbbing head responded. He grinned. We saw that movie together, the 3 of us. I lowered my head, but that just made the pounding worse. I looked back at Trevor. What am I supposed to do here, Trevor? I asked evenly, closing my eyes until the pain had reduced to a dull ache. I know this is a lot to take in, and you've been through so much the past few days, but I've been flying by the seat of my pants here. In our arrogance, we never made a contingency plan. We were so sure everything would be hunky-dory forever that we never thought your implants would start to short-circuit, for one. But I was remembering something Ty had told me the other day, one of his flashbacks. Ty remembered my implant spazzing out back then, too. Really? He was genuinely surprised. What did he say, exactly? That my eyes would freak out and it was hard to get me to snap out of it. He tilted his head back and his mouth fell open. Oh, that. I puckered my lips tightly and raised my eyebrows at him. That was an upgrade we tried, but had to remove. It was defective. Remove? How did you remove it? It was a simple procedure, and before you ask, I had opened my mouth to ask, yes, I can remove the implants, but why is there always a but? It's not going to be easy. Brain's been working on it for a year, but she's pretty sure she can do it. Ainsley? Is that what she's been doing? The rumor about Optimus Prime? He chuckled. Well, I think she might be building a giant transformer too, but yes, she lives in a warehouse and knows more about security and computers than anyone on the planet. She was the perfect person to build the machines we need, and she was very happy to do it. As long as I paid for all of it, of course. Technology is not cheap. All of a sudden, my back jeans pocket vibrated. I had been so into my conversation with Trevor, it took me a second to realize it was my phone. I pulled it out and saw a text from Blaze. My heart stopped, but immediately steadied. He was complaining about Levi not letting him have a second turn playing some video game. I turned it off and put it back in my pocket, mentally planning a little lecture for my middle child on what is and is not considered urgent. "The boys?" Trevor asked, and I looked up at him and swallowed hard. Before I could respond, he said, "I know they're at Jabba's. They're safe, I promise." "That's not what I started, not surprised at all at this point that he knew where they were, but he cut me off. "I love those boys, Freya, but I'm not their father. You already know that would be impossible." He didn't seem saddened by this. Sterility was just a fact of his life. "Who?" It was the least I could do for him, considering I got the girl. He smiled at me, so real that I remembered what I'd loved about him for all those years, programmed or not. "Ty?" His smile grew. Just then his phone rang. It startled both of us, but I literally leapt out of my chair. Trevor raised a hand to call me as he answered. "Yes?" Pause. "Yes, I just told her." Pause. "Give me 5 seconds." He hung up and set the phone on the desk, then walked over to the heavy security door and punched in a code on the panel. The door buzzed and popped open, and a tall, thin man entered, smiling at me. It was Leon.
You're listening to Big World Network.